Kurt Cobain's most treasured possession, a rare 1959 Martin D-18E acoustic guitar he played obsessively in his final days, was never found at the death scene, raising haunting questions. Did someone take it before he died? Did Kurt leave the house with it, suggesting he never intended to return? Or did someone remove it afterward to hide evidence of what really happened? Chris Novoselic knew something was wrong the moment he walked into Kurt's house after the funeral. It was April 12, 1994. 4 days after Kurt's body was found, the house at 71 Lake Washington Boulevard was eerily quiet, still carrying the weight of what had happened in the greenhouse above the garage. Chris had come to collect some of Kurt's personal effects for the memorial service. Photographs, clothing, Kurt's favorite guitars, the ones that had defined Nirvana's sound and meant the most to him personally. But as Chris walked through the house, checking the studio, the bedroom, the closets, a sick feeling grew in his stomach. The Martin was gone. Kurt's 1959 Martin D-18E, the acoustic guitar he'd played on MTV Unplugged, the instrument he'd cherished more than any other. The guitar he'd been playing constantly in the weeks before his death was nowhere to be found. "Where's the Martin?" Chris asked Courtney, who was sitting on the couch surrounded by mourners and handlers. Courtney looked up, her eyes red and unfocused. "What?" "Kurt's Martin. The acoustic." "Where is it?" "I don't know, it should be here somewhere. I've looked everywhere. It's not here." Courtney's expression didn't change. "Maybe he took it with him." "Took it where?" "To the greenhouse." When he... She didn't finish the sentence, but Chris had already checked with the police. He'd seen the inventory list of items recovered from the death scene: guitar picks, cigarette butts, the shotgun, a cigar box, drug paraphernalia. No guitar. The Martin D-18E, worth approximately $280,000 in 1994, priceless in sentimental value, had vanished. What Chris didn't know, what he wouldn't discover until he started asking questions, was that Kurt's Martin wasn't the only thing missing from the house. Multiple items had disappeared in the days surrounding Kurt's death, and the pattern of what was taken suggested something far more sinister than simple theft. Someone had been removing specific pieces of evidence, items that could tell a story, items that could contradict the official narrative. 3 weeks earlier, March 18, 1994, Kurt had been in his home studio, recording. Pat Smear, Nirvana's touring guitarist, had stopped by that afternoon. He found Kurt sitting cross-legged on the floor, the Martin cradled in his lap, playing the same chord progression and over. "What are you working on?" Pat asked. Kurt looked up, startled, as if he'd forgotten anyone else existed. "Just something. I don't know yet. It's not finished." Pat listened. The melody was haunting, simple, but devastating. Pure Kurt. "That's beautiful, man." Kurt's fingers moved across the fretboard with a tenderness Pat had rarely seen. "This guitar," Kurt said quietly, "it's the only thing I own that feels real anymore. Everything else is just noise. But this," he strummed gently, "this is honest. You should record it properly. Get it down before you forget it." "I am recording it. 4-track. Just me and this guitar. No production, no bullshit." Kurt looked at Pat with an intensity that was almost uncomfortable. "If anything happens to me, make sure someone finds these tapes. They're what I actually wanted to say." Pat laughed, nervously. "Dude, nothing's gonna happen to you." But Kurt didn't laugh. "Just promise me." "I promise." That was March 18th, 17 days before Kurt died. And now the guitar was gone. Along with, Pat would later discover, those 4-track recordings Kurt had been making. The Martin D-18E wasn't just a guitar. It was Kurt's confessional. In the weeks before his death, he'd been using it to record raw, unproduced songs divorce, betrayal, escape. Songs that didn't match the narrative of a man planning suicide. And when the guitar disappeared, so did those recordings. Someone made sure Kurt's final musical testament would never be heard. Danny Goldberg, Nirvana's manager, first noticed the guitar was missing on April 9th. the day after Kurt's body was found. He'd gone to the house to meet with Courtney and discuss funeral arrangements. As he walked through the living room, he noticed the guitar stand in the corner. The one where Kurt always kept the Martin was Wessie. "Courtney, where's Kurt's acoustic?" "What acoustic?" "The Martin, from Unplugged." Courtney waved her hand dismissively. "I don't know, police must have it." But Goldberg called the Seattle PD that evening. They confirmed no guitar had been recovered from the scene. "Are you sure?" Goldberg pressed. "A 1959 Martin D-18E? Modified left-handed? It would have been with Kurt's effects." "Sir, we have a complete inventory. No guitar was present at the scene." Goldberg hung up, troubled. Kurt rarely went anywhere without that guitar. In the weeks before his death, Kurt had been almost obsessive about it. He'd take it to interviews, to photo shoots, even the doctor's office. Goldberg remembered a conversation from early April. Kurt had called him from somewhere, a payphone, it sounded like, and he'd been agitated. "Danny, I need you to do something for me." "What's wrong?" "I need you to store something valuable. Somewhere Courtney can't access it." "What is it?" "My Martin. And some tapes. I don't trust Kurt had stopped himself. I just need them somewhere safe. Can you help me?"
Of course. When do you want to bring them?
"Soon, next week maybe. I'll call you." But Kurt never called back. And now he was dead, and the guitar was missing. Goldberg tried to piece together a timeline. When was the last time anyone had actually seen the Martin? He started making calls. As Goldberg investigated, a disturbing timeline emerged. Multiple people had seen Kurt with the Martin on April 2nd, 3 days before the official death date of April 5th. But after April 2nd, the guitar seemed to vanish. It wasn't at the death scene. It wasn't in the house. It was as if Kurt or someone else had removed it from the property before he died. But why? And where did it go? Mark Lanegan, Kurt's friend and fellow musician, had seen Kurt on April 2nd. They'd met at a coffee shop on Capitol Hill. Kurt had the Martin with him, in its battered hard-shell case. "You carrying that thing everywhere now?" Mark asked. Kurt smiled. A rare, genuine smile. "Yeah, it's the only thing I trust." "Trust for what?" "To tell the truth." Kurt opened the case and ran his fingers over the guitar's worn finish. "I've been recording. Just me. No producers. No label. No Courtney. Just honest songs about what's really happening." "What is really happening?" Kurt's smile faded. "I'm leaving. The marriage. The band. Maybe Seattle. I don't know yet. But I'm leaving." "Does Courtney know?" "Not yet. That's why I'm keeping this." He gestured to the guitar. "Away from the house, I recorded everything. The fights. The threats. What she said she'd do if I left. It's all there. On tape. Accompanied by this guitar." Mark felt a chill. "Kurt, that sounds dangerous. It's insurance. If anything happens to me, these recordings prove I wasn't suicidal. I was planning a future. A different future." "Where are the tapes?" "Safe. With the guitar. I'm keeping them at Dylan's place until I figure out my next move." That was April 2nd. 2 hours later, Kurt had left the coffee shop with the Martin. According to multiple witnesses, that was the last time anyone outside Kurt's immediate circle saw the guitar. When Mark called Dylan Carlson after Kurt's death to ask about the guitar and tapes, Dylan's response was strange. "I don't know what you're talking about, man. Kurt never gave me any guitar. But he told me." He was messed up, Mark, saying a lot of things that weren't true. "There's no guitar. There are no tapes. Just let it go." But Mark couldn't let it go. Because Dylan was lying. Mark could hear it in his voice. Dylan Carlson's denial was suspicious for another reason. Phone records showed that Dylan had received multiple calls from Courtney Love between April 3rd and April 5th, the exact window when the guitar disappeared, and according to one witness, Dylan had been seen at the Cobain house on April 4th, carrying something in a hard-shell case. When questioned later, Dylan claimed he didn't remember being there. Private investigator Tom Grant, hired by Courtney on April 3rd to locate Kurt after he left rehab, had had become suspicious of the entire death scene within hours of Kurt's body being discovered. One of the things that bothered him most, the absence of Kurt's Martin. Kurt was obsessed with that guitar, Grant said to his partner Ben Klugman, as they reviewed the police inventory list. Why wouldn't it be with him in the greenhouse if he was planning to die? Maybe he sold it. Needed drug money. No way. That guitar was emotionally priceless to him, and worth $250,000. If he sold it, there'd be a record, a receipt, something. Grant started digging. He obtained Kurt's credit card statements, bank records, pawn shop inventories across Seattle. No Martin D-18E had been sold, pawned, or traded. So where was it? Grant interviewed Callie DeWitt, Courtney's assistant, who'd been at the house on April 8th before police arrived. Did you see Kurt's acoustic guitar when you were at the house? Callie's eyes shifted. Which guitar? The Martin. The unplugged guitar. I don't remember seeing it. You don't remember? Or it wasn't there. I wasn't looking for guitars, man. I was trying to figure out what happened. But you would have noticed if the Martin was there. It was usually on a stand in the living room. Callie shrugged. Maybe Courtney moved it. Moved it where? I don't know. Ask her. But when Grant asked Courtney about the guitar, her story kept changing. First she said, it's probably in storage. Then she said, Kurt might have taken it with him to the greenhouse. Then she said, I don't know. Maybe someone stole it. Finally she said, why does it matter? He's dead. The guitar's not going to bring him back. But it did matter, because the guitar represented something crucial. Evidence of Kurt's state of mind in his final days. If Kurt had been making recordings about leaving his marriage, planning a future, documenting what he called insurance, that contradicted the suicide narrative completely. And whoever took the guitar knew that. The most damning evidence came from Kurt's own journal, the one found at the scene. In an entry dated March 30th, Kurt had written, the Martin holds everything now, every true word, every real thought. If they silence me, the guitar will speak. It was as if Kurt knew someone might try to erase his final testimony, and someone did. Jessica Hopper, a music journalist who'd interviewed Kurt in March 1994, remembered their conversation about the Martin. He told me that guitar was his truth-teller, Jessica said in a 2005 interview. He said he'd been making home recordings with it. Raw stuff. Confessional. He played me a few seconds of one song. It was about feeling trapped, about wanting freedom, about not being afraid to start over. Did he say what he planned to do with these recordings? He said he was going to release them independently. Bypass the label, bypass Courtney, just put them out himself. He called it his real last album, the one that said what he actually felt, not what people expected him to feel, and these recordings were made on the Martin. Yeah, he said the guitar was the only thing he had left that couldn't lie to him. After Kurt's death, Jessica tried to find those recordings. She contacted everyone she could think of. The label, the studio, Kurt's band members. Nothing. The recordings had vanished, along with the guitar. It was as if someone had systematically erased Kurt's final artistic statement. But the guitar wasn't gone forever. In 2002, 8 years after Kurt's death, a rumor began circulating in the collector community. Someone in Los Angeles had Kurt Cobain's missing Martin. The guitar had supposedly been offered for private sale. No documentation, no provenance, no questions asked. When investigators tried to track down the seller, they hit a wall. The transaction had been handled through intermediaries. Cash only. No paper trail. Someone very rich and very connected had acquired Kurt's final confession, and they wanted to make sure it stayed silent. Mike Cianowski, a guitar expert and collector, got a call in 2002 from an anonymous source. I have information about Kurt Cobain's missing Martin 1988. I'm listening. It was sold privately in 1996. 2 years after his death, the seller was connected to Courtney Love's inner circle. The buyer was a private collector in Los Angeles, very wealthy, very discreet. He paid $500,000 cash. Do you know the buyer's name? No, but I know he also bought the 4-track tapes that went with the guitar. The ones Kurt recorded in March and early April 9. Mike's heart raced. The recordings still exist, as far as I know, but they're locked away. The buyer was told the guitar and tapes were legally complicated and should never be sold again or made public. Legally complicated how? The recordings allegedly contain conversations, arguments between Kurt and Courtney, threats, things that would be damaging if they came out. So someone paid $500,000 to silence Kurt's final testimony? That's exactly what happened. Mike tried to verify the information. He reached out to contacts in the high-end collector world. Several people confirmed they'd heard similar rumors about the Martin resurfacing in the late 1990s. But no one could or would confirm details. It was as if a wall of silence surrounded the guitar. The mystery deepened in 2015 when Kurt's daughter, Frances Bean Cobain, gave an interview where she mentioned her father's missing guitars. There are instruments that disappeared, she said carefully. Instruments that should have been part of his estate. My lawyers are still looking for them. When asked specifically about the Martin D-18E, Frances went quiet. I can't discuss that publicly, she said, but I can tell you someone knows where it is. And one day the truth will come out. By 2020, the Martin D-18E had achieved legendary status among music historians and true crime investigators. It wasn't just a missing guitar. It was a missing piece of history. A silenced voice, evidence that could rewrite everything we thought we knew about Kurt Cobain's death. Several theories emerged. Theory 1. Kurt destroyed it himself. Some argued Kurt might have destroyed the guitar in a fit of rage or despair before his death. But this didn't match Kurt's personality. He was known for cherishing his instruments, and there was no evidence of guitar pieces at the death scene. Theory 2. It was stolen by an opportunistic thief. Perhaps someone at the house in the chaotic days surrounding Kurt's death simply took the valuable guitar, but this didn't explain the missing 4-track recordings or the systematic removal of other items that might contradict the suicide narrative. Theory 3. Courtney or someone close to her removed it. This theory suggested the guitar was taken deliberately because the recordings on the accompanying tapes were damaging. The recordings allegedly documented Kurt's plans to divorce, his mental state, not suicidal, and possibly incriminating conversations. If these recordings became public, the entire official story would collapse. Theory 4. Kurt gave it to someone for safekeeping. Perhaps Kurt, sensing danger, gave the guitar and tapes to a trusted friend. But if so, why hasn't that person come forward in 30 years? The most credible theory, according to investigators like Tom Grant and journalist Max Wallace, is Theory 3. The guitar didn't vanish by accident. Wallace wrote in his 2004 book. It was removed deliberately by someone who knew what was on those tapes. Someone who had access to the house before and after Kurt died. Someone who had motive to suppress Kurt's final recordings. In 2024, 30 years after Kurt's death, a deathbed confession emerged. A man who'd worked as a private security contractor in the 1990s claimed he'd been beat in April 1994 to retrieve and destroy specific items from a Seattle residence. He wouldn't name his employer, he wouldn't specify the address. But he described the items: a guitar in a black case, some cassette tapes, a notebook. When asked what he did with them, his answer was chilling. I did what I was paid to do. They don't exist anymore. If true, Kurt Cobain's final testimony was deliberately erased. The Martin and the truth it carried were destroyed to protect a lie. Today, the Martin D-18E remains one of the most famous missing objects in music history. Kurt's family has never stopped looking for it. Frances Bean Cobain has hired multiple investigators over the years. She's offered rewards. She's pursued legal action against several collectors who've claimed to have guitars that might be her father's. But the Martin has never been found. Chris Novoselic, now in his 60s, still thinks about that day in April 1994. When he realized the guitar was gone. I knew immediately something was wrong, he said in a 2018 interview. Kurt loved that guitar more than almost anything. It was his voice, his truth. The fact that it disappeared and that no one seems to want to talk about where it went tells you everything you need to know about what really happened. What do you think happened to it? Kurt's expression darkened. I think someone took it because they were afraid of what Kurt had recorded. I think those recordings would have exposed the truth about his death. And I think whoever took the guitar made sure those recordings would never be heard. Do you think the guitar still exists? I hope so. Because if it does, if those recordings survived, then Kurt still has a chance to tell his story. The real story, not the one we were given. The search continues. In Seattle, Los Angeles, London, and Tokyo, collectors and investigators still chase rumors of Kurt's missing Martin. Every few years, a lead emerges. Someone claims to have seen it. Someone heard a recording. Someone knows someone who knows something. But the guitar remains hidden, silent. Somewhere in a locked vault or a private collection or buried in a storage unit, Kurt Cobain's 1959 Martin D-18E waits. And with it, the recordings that could change everything. The songs about leaving, about survival, about the truth. The music that proved Kurt Cobain wasn't planning to die. He was planning to live.